Nia had always dreamed of this moment. Growing up in Kumasi, she often imagined herself walking down the aisle, finally stepping into the kind of happiness she had long prayed for. Life had not been gentle with her. Her childhood was filled with challenges that left scars on her heart. Losing her father, watching her family fall apart, and never quite feeling the warmth of a complete home. Yet, despite it all, she carried hope like a flame that refused to die. That hope was Kweku. Kweku wasn't just her fiancé, he was her safe place. After years of love and patience, he had promised her a life where she would never have to feel abandoned again. Their wedding was only weeks away, and Nia's heart overflowed with excitement. She pictured the music, the bright Kent cloth, the laughter of friends and family filling the air in Accra. For once, the girl who had known loneliness was about to step into a season of joy. In quiet moments, she would whisper to herself that her life was finally turning around. She believed love had healed her, that her suffering had led her here, to a future worth fighting for. She wanted to prove to herself that pain didn't get the final word. But as Nia's heart beat with dreams of forever, she had no idea a storm was brewing. The betrayal that was about to come would not come from strangers. It would rise from within her own family, cutting deeper than she could ever imagine. Amma was the kind of woman people noticed the moment she entered a room. She carried herself with elegance, her clothes always perfect, her words carefully chosen, her smile hiding more than it revealed. To the outside world, she seemed like the picture of grace, but to Nia, she was a constant reminder that her father was gone. After Nia's father passed, Amma became the woman of the house, and with that came a quiet, unspoken power. From the very beginning, Amma never warmed to Nia. She watched the girl with sharp eyes, as if Nia's very presence was a threat. What bothered her most was how much love Nia's father had poured into his daughter while he was alive. He had always spoken of Nia with pride, praising her kindness, her hardworking spirit, and even her beauty. Amma could never compete with that kind of love. Deep inside, jealousy grew like poison, but she hid it behind polite smiles and sweet words. Nia, on the other hand, tried to bridge the gap. She wanted her stepmother to like her, to see her as a daughter and not a rival. She would compliment her, seek her advice, and even help her around the house just to win a little affection. Sometimes Amma would act kind in return, making Nia believe she was finally breaking through, but it was only an act. Behind closed doors, Amma's bitterness deepened. What Nia did not know was that Amma's heart was never content with simply being part of the family. She craved control, respect, and admiration. And every time she looked at Nia, the girl who had her late father's love, the girl who was about to marry a good man and live a happy life, her envy burned hotter. Amma didn't just dislike Nia. She wanted to break her, to take away the very things that made her shine. While Nia prepared for the happiest chapter of her life, she had no idea her stepmother was quietly plotting in the shadows. To Amma, Nia's joy was a spotlight she couldn't stand to watch. And slowly, with patience and cunning, she began shaping plans that would soon turn Nia's dream into a nightmare. The wedding preparations were supposed to be the happiest days of Nia's life. From the moment the date was set, her heart bubbled with excitement. She and Kweku had always talked about a beautiful ceremony in Accra, where family and friends would gather in their best clothes, music would fill the air, and their love would be celebrated with laughter and dancing. It was everything she had dreamed of since she was a little girl. Amma, of course, was quick to step in and offer her help. At first, Nia was touched. She thought maybe this was a chance for them to finally bond as mother and daughter, planning something so important together. Amma smiled sweetly and said she only wanted the best for her. But Amma's help was not help at all. It was control. She made herself part of every conversation, every decision, and somehow managed to push Nia to the side. When Nia suggested a particular color scheme, Amma would laugh softly and say, "Oh dear, that will make you look too dark under the lights." When Nia mentioned her dream of having her father's favorite dish served at the reception, Amma shook her head and whispered to Kweku, "She's too sentimental. She doesn't understand what guests expect at a grand wedding." Slowly, her words began to sink into Kweku's mind. Whenever Nia wasn't around, Amma would lean closer to him, planting seeds of doubt. "She's young," she would murmur. "She doesn't really know how to handle these big decisions. You deserve a wife who can match your vision." Kweku would nod uneasily, torn between his loyalty to Nia and the persuasive elegance of Amma's voice. Nia started to notice small changes. Kweku seemed less patient, less eager to include her in the detail. He brushed off her ideas and sometimes looked to Amma before answering her. At night, Nia lay awake, wondering why she suddenly felt like a stranger in her own love story. She told herself not to overthink, that it was only stress. But deep down, something didn't feel right. The wedding that was supposed to bring joy was slowly becoming a battlefield she didn't even know she was fighting. And at the center of it all was Amma, weaving her web with quiet cruelty, determined to make Nia's dream fall apart. It started with little things that Nia tried to brush off. Kweku stopped answering her calls right away. Sometimes he would return them hours later, with quick excuses about being busy with work or caught up with friends. At first, Nia believed him. She told herself every couple goes through stressful moments before a wedding. But as the days went by, the excuses became more frequent, the silences longer, and the warmth in his voice began to fade. Late nights became the new normal. Nia would wait up for him, her heart heavy with worry, but he would walk in tired and distracted, barely noticing her disappointment. When she asked questions, he brushed her off, saying she was overthinking. The man who once couldn't go a day without making her laugh now seemed like a shadow of himself, distant and unreachable. Amma noticed Nia's unease and, in her usual sly way, played the role of the caring stepmother. She would sit beside Nia, holding her hand and whispering, "Men can be difficult sometimes. Don't worry, he still loves you." Her words sounded comforting, but her eyes held a different story, one Nia couldn't quite read. Nia wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to the hope that her stepmother was right. But deep inside, her instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. What Nia didn't know was that while Amma was wiping her fake tears of sympathy, she was living a double life. Behind closed doors, she and Kweku had already crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. The whispered conversations, the lingering touches, the stolen moments, they were all happening while Nia slept with a hopeful heart. Amma, who had always envied her, was now feeding on the very love that was meant to be Nia's safe place. The betrayal was already alive, hidden in the shadows, growing stronger with each passing night. Nia still held on, telling herself she just needed to be patient, that everything would go back to how it used to be. But the truth was already unfolding behind her back, and soon, it would shatter her world completely. 2 weeks before the wedding, when Nia should have been finalizing her gown fittings and counting down the days to her joy, her world came crashing down. The truth did not come gently, it hit her like a storm. A close friend pulled her aside one evening, her face pale with pity, and whispered the unthinkable. Amma and Kweku were together. Not just secretly meeting, but boldly telling people they were engaged. At first, Nia laughed nervously, shaking her head. It had to be a mistake, a cruel rumor. But the evidence piled up quickly. Pictures of them at dinners, whispers of them holding hands in public, and then the final blow. Amma introducing Kweku as her fiancé at a gathering, smiling proudly as if she had won a prize. Nia's knees went weak. It was her wedding that was supposed to be announced. It was her love, her life, her dream. And now, it had been stolen by the very woman who lived under her roof. With trembling hands and a heart that felt like it was breaking into pieces, Nia confronted them. She found them together, laughing as though nothing in the world was wrong. Her voice cracked as she asked, "How could you do this to me?" For a moment, she hoped Kweku would look ashamed, that Amma would at least pretend to feel guilty. But instead, Amma threw her head back and laughed coldly. "I deserve what you never could," she sneered, her eyes glittering with triumph. The words cut deeper than any knife. Kweku stood silently beside her, not defending Nia, not even looking at her. That silence hurt just as much as Amma's cruelty. In that moment, Nia felt stripped of everything, her love, her dignity, her trust. The wedding she had been dreaming of was no longer her. The man she thought was her safe place had chosen the very person who had always despised her. Her heart shattered, but somewhere in that pain, a fire began to flicker. The betrayal was cruel, but it would not be the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a new one. The news spread faster than Nia could catch her breath. In Kumasi, whispers travel like wildfire, and soon everyone seemed to know her private pain. Women at the market shook their heads when she passed, whispering behind their hand. Men muttered that she had been too blind, too trusting, too naive to see what was happening right under her nose. The same people who once admired her for her grace now mocked her for being weak. Every glance felt like a dagger. Every laugh in the distance felt like it was meant for her. Amma and Kweku, on the other hand, didn't hide. They flaunted their new relationship boldly, walking side by side through town, holding hands as though they hadn't destroyed someone's life to be together. Amma dressed even more extravagantly now, smiling as if she had conquered something. Kweku walked beside her, his head high, like a man proud of his choice. Their boldness made the humiliation even worse for Nia, who couldn't step outside without feeling the weight of gossip crushing her. At night, when she lay in her room, the pain pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. She replayed everything, every promise Kweku had made, every smile he had given her, every comforting word he once spoke. How could it all have been a lie? How could he have traded their love so easily? And worse, how could her own stepmother be the one to take it all away? Her heart was torn between anger and shame. Part of her wanted to scream at the world, to remind them of the love she once had. But another part of her crumbled under the weight of their judgment. She began to question herself. Was she really so foolish? Did she not deserve love? Was she destined to always be betrayed? While Amma and Kweku paraded around as though they had won, Nia was left in the shadows, broken and humiliated. Every smile she forced in public, every tear she cried in private, became part of a silent battle she was fighting with herself. She didn't know it yet, but this pain, this humiliation, would one day become the fuel that would light her way to something greater. For now, all she felt was the sting of betrayal and the crushing weight of the world's cruel laughter. After weeks of tears and sleepless nights, Nia reached a breaking point. She could not keep living in shame, hiding while Amma and Kweku flaunted their betrayal. One morning, as she sat alone in the kitchen, she thought of her late father, the man who had always believed in her. She remembered how he used to say, "Life will try to break you, but don't let it. You are stronger than you think." Those words lit something inside her. If love had failed her, then she would build her strength in another way. Nia turned to the one thing that had always brought her comfort: cooking. Her father had taught her the secrets of traditional Ghanaian recipe, and together they had once dreamed of opening a small catering service. Though grief had pushed that dream aside, now she picked it up again, determined to make it real. At first, she started small, preparing meals for neighbors, church gatherings, and birthday parties. Every dish carried not only her father's touch, but also her own heart. Word spread quickly. People who once whispered about her humiliation now whispered about her food. They praised the taste, the presentation, and the warmth she poured into every plate. Slowly, her small business began to grow. Orders came in faster than she expected, and soon she needed helpers to keep up. Nia no longer had time to sit and cry. Her days were filled with planning menus, shopping at markets, and delivering joy through her cooking. Her talent began to catch the attention of people outside her neighborhood. Invitations to cater bigger events arrived: weddings, company parties, even political gatherings. The same community that once mocked her now applauded her resilience. She had taken her pain and turned it into purpose. With every event she catered, her confidence returned. The laughter she once thought she'd lost began to echo again in her kitchen. For the first time in a long while, Nia saw herself not as the broken woman left behind, but as a strong, determined woman who could rise from it. What Amma and Kweku had tried to destroy had only made her stronger. And soon, her name would not just be known in Kumasi, it would be celebrated across Ghana. While Nia's life was slowly rising into light, Amma and Kweku's marriage was sinking into darkness. What had begun as a forbidden thrill quickly turned into a cage. Amma's charm, which had once drawn Kweku in, turned bitter once she felt secure with the ring on her finger. She was controlling, always demanding more, always criticizing. Nothing Kweku did was ever enough. Their home became a battlefield of constant arguments, slammed doors, and nights spent in cold silence. Kweku, once proud and confident, began to feel the weight of his choices. At work, his focus slipped. Rumors spread of shady deals he had been involved in, and soon enough, a scandal broke out that cost him his job. Overnight, the man who used to be admired was unemployed and disgraced. Friends he once relied on began to distance themselves, unwilling to be caught in his downfall. Amma, instead of supporting him, lashed out even more. She accused him of being weak, of ruining the life she thought she deserved. Money grew tight, debts piled up, and the glamorous lifestyle she loved started to crumble. The same people who once envied her now whispered about her behind her back, calling her arrogant and cursed. Meanwhile, Nia's catering business was blossoming like never before. Her food had become more than just meals. It was an experience everyone wanted to be part of. From small households to high-profile events, her name was on everyone's lips. She was invited to cook at elite functions in Accra, and soon, her brand became a household name across Ghana. Newspapers wrote about her success, radio shows featured her story, and people admired her resilience. The contrast could not have been clearer. While Amma and Kweku sank deeper into chaos, Nia rose higher with grace and strength. What they had tried to take from her, her dignity, her happiness, came back to her tenfold, while what they built on betrayal collapsed in their hands. It was as if life itself was teaching them a lesson. You cannot build joy on someone else's pain. And as Nia continued to flourish, Amma and Kweku were left to face the bitter taste of their own choices. Karma had knocked, and it had arrived loudly at their door. The night of the gala was a night Nia would never forget. She walked into the grand hall in Accra, dressed in a flowing gown that shimmered under the lights, her head held high. The room was filled with some of the most powerful and respected people in Ghana: business leaders, politicians, celebrities. And among them, Nia was not just a guest. She was the guest of honor, celebrated for her incredible journey and the success of her catering empire. As her name was called, the crowd stood and applauded, a sound that filled her heart with pride. But then, as if fate wanted to write the perfect ending, Amma and Kweku appeared. Their faces told a different story than the one they once flaunted. Amma's beauty looked faded under the weight of stress, and Kweku's proud shoulders seemed bent with shame. Their fall from grace was obvious. The whispers in the crowd followed them as they walked nervously toward Nia. With shaky voices, they tried to smile and ask for her help. Kweku muttered about business connections, while Amma tried to soften her tone, pretending as if they were family again. The same people who had once mocked Nia were now begging for her kindness. Nia looked at them calmly, her heart steady. She could have shouted, could have humiliated them the way they had done to her. But instead, she smiled politely and said, "I remember when you laughed at me, when you made me feel small. Tonight, I choose not revenge, but dignity. I cannot help you." The words cut deeper than anger ever could. The hall fell silent for a moment, and then applause erupted. People admired her grace, her strength, her refusal to let bitterness define her. Amma and Kweku stood frozen, faces burning with humiliation, as the crowd clapped for the woman they had once destroyed. In that moment, Nia realized she had won, not just in business, but in spirit. Her enemies were defeated not by her hands, but by the weight of their own choices. And she, the woman they once mocked, now stood tall, celebrated, and free. Nia's life after the storm was nothing like she had once imagined, and yet, it was everything she needed. She no longer measured her worth by who stood beside her, but by what she had built with her own 2 hands. Her catering business continued to grow, expanding into restaurants, cookbooks, and even international events. But more than the success, it was the joy she found in her work that healed her. Every meal she created carried her story. Pain turned into strength, betrayal turned into beauty. For the first time, Nia lived on her own terms. She traveled, met new people, and opened her heart to experiences she once thought were impossible. She didn't rush into love again. Instead, she learned to love herself in a way she never had before. She realized that her value had never been tied to Kweku's promises or Amma's cruelty. It was in her resilience, her courage, and her ability to rise when everything tried to break her. Amma and Kweku were no longer part of her story. Their downfall was their own doing, and karma had taken care of them better than Nia ever could. She didn't need revenge. Life had already balanced the scales. One evening, Nia stood on the balcony of her new home, overlooking the city lights of Accra. The breeze carried the sounds of laughter from the streets below, and for the first time in a long while, she felt complete peace. She smiled, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she had survived it and turned it into power. Her enemies had tried to destroy her, but in the end, their betrayal became the very thing that pushed her into victory.